react to an explosion. It's unclear what they were doing on the Kremlin roof in the middle of the night.
Exactly my point.
Of staging the attack to gain public support for a failing war. President Zelensky was in Finland at the time.
We don't attack Putin or Moscow.
There's been intense fighting in this area and in Khartoum, despite a 7-day ceasefire, and in the city of Al-Lubaid in North changes fire with the Rapid Support Forces. The army, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has ruled out negotiations.
The government of Sudan has agreed only to the ceasefire and not to any mediation regarding the resolution of the conflict. This is simply because it is a rebellion against the Sudanese armed forces by a group once affiliated to the army. To us, the final solution will be decided on the ground.
Prior to the conflict, 15 million people were reliant on humanitarian assistance for survival. That number has now increased, with tens of thousands displaced and aid meant for those in need looted or destroyed. And here in Khartoum,
needs to stop. And to stop now. Before more people die and this conflict explodes into an all-out war that could affect the region for years to come.
the fate of millions of Sudanese is in the hands of two men, locked in a power struggle, refusing to lay down their weapons and negotiate.
Scenes of destruction in India's northeastern Manipur state. Long-running tensions between the majority Meitei community and tribal groups has flared into violence. The unrest was triggered by a court ruling recommending that the Meitei should be labeled a scheduled tribe, which would grant special job quotas and subsidized education. Other tribal groups are opposed to this. The Indian Army has been called in to restore calm. Thousands of people have also been moved to safer locations. Mobile internet has been shut down for 5 days, and the state government has issued a shoot-at-sight order to enforce a curfew. India's army says it's brought the situation under control and is continuing to work to restore normalcy.
Tonight, the ancient city of Nablus echoing with gunfire. Israeli special forces cornering and killing 3 Hamas militants after a month-long pursuit across the occupied West Bank. The gunmen responsible for killing a British-Israeli mother and her 2 daughters, according to both Hamas and Israel. At a nearby refugee camp,
all-night manhunt involving helicopters and hundreds of police officers. A suspect was arrested in Kragujevac, 100 kilometers south of Belgrade. Local media reported gunmen opened fire from a moving vehicle at passers-by in 3 villages just 60 kilometers from the capital, killing and injuring villagers. Serbia's interior minister has called the shootings a terrorist act, and many residents are in shock.
This is terrible for our state. This is a huge defeat, unfortunately. In 2 days, so many kids killed. This is not good.
Serbia has a widespread gun culture, a result of weapons left behind from the wars in the 90s.
2 Timothy 3:1-13. But know this, that in the last days perilous times will come. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And from such people, turn away. For of this sort are those who creep into households and make captives of gullible women, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts, always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Now as Jannes and Jambres resisted Moses, so do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds, disapproved concerning the faith, but they will progress no further, for their folly will be made manifest to all. as theirs also was. But you have carefully followed my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, long-suffering, love, perseverance, persecutions, afflictions, which happened to me at Antioch, at Iconium, at Lystra. What persecutions I endured, and out of them all the Lord delivered me. Yes, and all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. But evil men and impostors will grow worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. I believe God has raised up Joe Biden for such a time as this. I believe God is using Joe Biden as judgment on the United States of America. Since Biden took office, every kind of evil has run amok. God will use anyone he chooses to fulfill his purpose. And I believe that purpose for Joe Biden is the destruction of America.
A fascinating survey released last week got very little attention, but given the latest news out of crime-ridden New York, it's worth revisiting. According to this CBS YouGov poll, 72% of Americans think the country is out of percent to the economy at 85%, with 75% citing culture and values, and 71% just plain Biden. We showed you last night how criminals are terrorizing residents even in San Francisco's upscale neighborhoods. And extended lockdowns destroyed kids' education and in-office work. The Floyd riots, where looting and destruction went unpunished, the continuing racial animosity stoked by the left, all of it is a factor in here. It's a powder keg with a fuse on top. Things are so bad, many residents are afraid to take the subway or even walk at night.
Well, I almost got attacked by a homeless man a couple of days ago.
I'm much more aware of what's going on around me. I don't take the subway as much.
It just gets worse every day. I do worry.
They're going to refuse to be sitting ducks, which is what one Marine veteran did in the face of a belligerent man on a moving subway car. The passenger subdued the threatening individual, a man named Jordan Neely. He kept him down with a chokehold. You can see it here. Once police arrived, he was taken to the hospital where he died. This individual had a rap sheet a mile long, 42 arrests, including charges stemming from 3 unprovoked assaults on women in the subway. He even reportedly had one active warrant for an alleged assault that happened in 2021. His death was tragic, but it sent all the pro-criminal left-wing loons out there seething.
And so we'll see how this unfolds, but his family deserves justice.
Alvin Bragg's office is promising a full investigation. Al Sharpton is hoping for a manslaughter charge and stands with protesters who are demanding justice for Jordan. Now, what about justice for the thousands and thousands of New Yorkers who felt threatened over the past year by the city's rampant crime? Remember the story of Jose Alba, that Harlem bodega owner who also refused to be a victim? In self-defense, he stabbed a man who ran behind, jumped over the store counter, and shoved him up against the wall. He was initially charged with second-degree murder. Now, last July, Bragg dismissed the charges only after a loud and sustained public outcry. But there's no justice for them in Bragg's revolving door of arrests and releases, because thugs feel invincible in the Big Apple. They have an upper hand on the streets and underground, like subway slasher Alvin of 3 to death on the subway. Bailey fought back, but it was too late. Now think about the culture we're creating here, where men who jump in and defend the defenseless are villainized, and criminals are coddled. They're deified, like George Floyd and Jordan Neely. The incentive today is when you see someone who appears dangerous, do nothing. Take no action other than maybe calling 911. But what happens when you're in an enclosed space and you have no idea when security will actually get there? Media are covering this case. You think the hero is the career criminal and the 24-year-old former Marine is the thug.
And the inhumanity of it, watching what happened with this poor person in the subway car, Jordan Neely in New York, chokehold and murdered, basically.
To say murder means that Neely's death was an intentional act. Now that's absurd on its face. Individuals who feel justifiably threatened should be able to defend themselves with proportional force. Well, here's the bottom line.
York City, San Francisco, Chicago, D.C., these places are the absolute hearts of American liberalism. And if liberalism can't work there, in any of those places, some of the richest places on the planet, then it can't work anywhere. Because the streets aren't safe, the offices are sitting empty, the schools are failing, and normal people are trying to get away. So how can we be a great country when our biggest and richest cities are dying?
This urgent manhunt tonight for the suspect who allegedly killed 5 of his neighbors in Cleveland, Texas, including a mother and her 9-year-old son, after that family asked their neighbor to stop firing his AR-15 style weapon because it was scaring their baby. The reward tonight now standing at $80,000, and new details here about the suspect tonight in
Parado, Obdulia Molina Rivera, and Josue Jonathan Cázares. 5 others surviving.
A man with ties to MS-13 charged with the brutal murder of an Uber Eats driver in what police are calling a demonic attack. Authorities finding the victim, 59-year-old Randall Cook, dismembered in trash bags and his wedding ring inside the suspect, Oscar Solis's home. Solis, a lengthy rap sheet, including 2 charges of burglary and battery and stabbing an inmate while in prison.
Eats driver texted his wife during and after they allegedly threw a rock at her car, killing her.
Now, 3 18-year-olds have been arrested for the murder.
It was a massive investigation that also included a few witnesses. One reportedly told investigators that one of the suspects, quote, frequently participates in destructive behavior. He likes causing chaos. That's what a friend of one of the rock-throwing suspects allegedly had to say about them. That's according to newly released arrest documents for these 3 18-year-olds now facing...
Who's in Islamabad Forest. Kamal, what more are you hearing about the circumstances of this attack?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, the incident took place in Kurram district. This is very close to the Afghan border.
St. Pierre. She was just 39 years old.
This community mourning the death, the murder of Amy St. Pierre, killed in the latest mass shooting here in Atlanta. Thousands of people yesterday running for cover, for shelter, as police search for an armed gunman.
We have a national epidemic. One happening last night near the intersection of 2nd and L Streets. We have team coverage this morning out of Davis. KCRA3's Leticia Ordaz speaking with police on last night's stabbing.
And then Mike DeSalle has some of the safety concerns from the community. First, the latest on the most recent stabbing with Leticia. What are police saying?
Well, police are saying this can all be connected. There's been 2 other stabbings earlier this week. And this one here today, it's not a deadly stabbing. That woman was taken to the hospital. We are told she is in surgery and she is fighting for her life. But this is where this incident occurred. This is 2nd and L Streets. The woman, we are told, was sleeping in one of the 2 tents that is set up here along the street when a man came by and stabbed her through that tent. Friends say that she was speaking when paramedics got to the scene.
And deadly stabbings in Davis in court for the very first time. Here's a look at that. Carlos Dominguez accused of stabbing 3 people over the course of 5 or 6 days. 2 men were killed. A woman, Kimberly Guillory, survived. After she was stabbed, Guillory managed to get a good look at her attacker, helping police track down a suspect. And today we're learning